Learning guitar is insanely complex. I would go even so far as to claim that it's harder to learn than other instruments due to its design. This instrument has 3 design features that makes it so hard to learn. So, no matter what type of guitar or music style you play, but if you find yourself struggling and being confused with understanding the guitar, maybe even after years of dedication, playing, practicing and gigging, then it's likely that your struggle is caused by these 3 design features. If you are not aware of them and their practical consequences, it's likely that you will stay confused for years to come, but it's possible to spare yourself this confusion by understanding how the guitar is designed and how this design has an impact on learning and playing this instrument. It took me many years of playing the guitar to realize and most importantly to articulate this. Because when you're engrossed in playing the guitar and making music, you're likely to overlook what's hidden in plain sight. This video gathers hundreds of insights from over the years playing guitar and boils them down to 3 main design features that make the guitar an insanely complex instrument. If you watch till the end, I will show you how and what to practice on the guitar to really avoid years of confusion, so it's really worth your time. The goal of this video here is to help you understand why you struggle with this instrument and why it's hard for us guitarists to learn and grasp music theory concepts like intervals, scales, triads, reading music and using tabs instead. If you still feel overwhelmed after watching this video, that's okay, because you need to gain these insights through your own practice experience. And for this reason, I will follow up this topic with a short series of videos containing exercises that will help you decipher the guitar once and for all. So make sure to do these exercises in those future videos, gain the experience needed, and then watch this video again. Everything will then make sense for you. Every instrument is just a tool for making music. Before it makes sense to explain how the guitar works, let's think about how simple music really is at its core, because it's about changing pitch. And there is really not much to it when it comes to understanding how pitch works. It's a linear process, it's one-dimensional, because you can illustrate this on a single axis like this. You go from low to high. Notice that it's just one single dimension with 2 directions. The piano keyboard is a perfect representation of this axis. Your hand and finger movements are always moving left to right when the music dictates changing the pitch from low to high, and vice versa. If the music dictates changing the pitch from high to low, you have to move your hands and fingers leftwards. So on the piano, hand and finger movements are perfectly aligned with the physical nature of music. If the pitch goes up, the fingers move up. If the pitch goes down, the fingers move down. You might ponder why this is even important. It's because of the way we learn an instrument. Let's say you practice scales on the piano. Your brain and subconscious mind can now create a muscle memory to ear connection between how the pitch is changing when you are moving your fingers and hands from left to right and vice versa. So, if you are moving from left to right, then the pitch goes up and vice versa. And you quickly learn that it's not possible to change the pitch from high to low by moving rightwards. In theory and on the piano, the structure does not allow this. But for us guitarists, let's put it this way. It's more complicated. It's 2-dimensional. Unlike the piano, the guitar is 2-dimensional when it comes to pitch. If we just take a look at a single string, then we can say that it shares the very same properties of the first dimension that we already explored, and there is a perfect alignment of pitch and finger movement. If we play up, the pitch goes up. If we play down, the pitch goes down. So far, so good. But the guitar isn't played on just a single string. While a single string represents the horizontal dimension, there is the second dimension in the vertical direction, where you play across multiple strings, and this second dimension is where it gets extremely complicated. But before it gets more complex, let's keep in mind that the structure of the guitar is already more complex just through this. Remember, pitch is just a simple and one-dimensional phenomenon. To change it, you simply move from left to right or right to left. On the guitar, you can do this as well. But in addition to that, you can change the pitch by moving vertically. So you can go from left to right, from right to left, and up and down, and from down to up. Let's reveal the second problem that makes the guitar an insanely complex instrument. The pitch distances are invisible in vertical direction. In terms of pitch, to play from one key to the other is a half step. The entire keyboard is structured this way. So, if you go from one key to the other over the entire keyboard, you just play half steps. On guitar, if you play from one fret to the other along a single string, then you just played half steps as well. This is the simple structure of the first dimension. But what does it mean to go from one string to the other in terms of pitch? To get an answer to this question, you have to know that the guitar is tuned in the interval of perfect fourth. So, if you just play the open strings from low E to A, you've changed the pitch from E to A, which is the distance of a perfect fourth. But what is a perfect fourth exactly? It's the distance of 5 half steps. On the keyboard, this would look like this. On a single string, it looks like this. Notice the counterintuitive nature of this design feature. Moving from one string to another is a small physical step, but in terms of pitch, it's a significant leap. A perfect fourth is a rather large interval because you are skipping over 4 notes without any visual indications. The last layer of complexity of our second dimension is this. It's irregular. I said that the guitar is tuned in perfect fourth, but if you listen carefully when you go from the third string to the second string, it doesn't quite fit that pattern. It sounds different, right? That's because it's a major third, which is like skipping a step in our usual pattern, because it's just 4 half steps wide instead of 5. So the interval structure of the open strings are as follows. So there is an interval of a perfect fourth, a perfect fourth, a perfect fourth, a major third, and a perfect fourth. Notice here that it's an irregular pattern, and there are no visual cues for the major third, which is the exception here. So compare this to our first dimension, which was completely regular and organized in half steps. This second dimension is irregular because it's organized with this interval structure. Okay, before we move on to the practical consequences of all this, let's briefly recap the 3 points here. The entire complexity of the guitar is based on 3 problems related to changing the pitch on this instrument. Pitch is a one-dimensional concept. You can move only in 2 directions, up and down or left and right, depending on what you are looking at. If you take a look at the piano or a single string, then it's the most natural thing in the world to change the pitch by moving left or right. But the guitar has 2 dimensions, the horizontal dimension and the vertical dimension. The second problem is that the second dimension, where you play from one string to the other, does not allow you to see the pitch distances between 2 strings, making the pitch properties from one note to another invisible. And the third layer of complexity lies in the irregular structure of the second dimension, because of the exception between the G and B strings. Knowing all this, what are the practical consequences and real-life problems that you as a guitarist are confronted with on a daily basis? First, let's start with the biggest confusion that you are maybe not even aware of. It's the misalignment between pitch relation, finger distances and directions. Let's say we want to play a whole step up, which is 2 half steps wide. To make it even more specific, let's go from A to B. On the piano it's easy, you just go from this key to this key and there is 1 key in between. So you moved 2 half steps, which is a whole step. And direction-wise, you've only moved from left to right. Let's take a look at how this is executed on the guitar. First of all, you can play the very same notes in more than just one position. In standard tuning, there are 3 possible ways to play this example. The first one is possible on the A string alone, from the open A string to the 2nd fret on the same string. Here you only make use of the first dimension. You move upwards and there is 1 fret in between. The second one is played like this, from the 5th fret on the low E string to the 2nd fret on the A string. Here you make use of the 2nd dimension. Now you move your fingers vertically and also in the opposite direction. So you move your fingers downwards compared to the previous example, and there are just 2 frets in between instead of 1 fret. The third run is played on the low E string, 5th fret to the 7th fret on the same string, and there is 1 fret in between. As you can see, you can move in both directions to change the pitch. On guitar, it's possible to move up to increase the pitch and also to move down when combined with a string change. This feature allows for counterintuitive finger positions for certain intervals. Small intervals can be played with big finger stretches and big intervals can be played with close finger positions. On piano, this is simply not possible. The correlation between the size of the interval and the finger distance remains proportional. On guitar, this is totally broken up, so it's extremely counterintuitive. I hope that by now you can sense why many guitarists aren't best friends with music theory. Most concepts in music theory are relatively simple, but if you try to understand them through the lens of a guitar, even the most linear thing becomes highly complicated and confusing. Let's simply think through 2 simple examples to illustrate what I mean by this. The first example is the major scale. It is a very simple concept in music theory and can be briefly and easily explained. The major scale consists of 7 notes and has a simple whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step structure. Notice the linear structure. To go from low to high, the notes move in one direction from bottom to top. This linearity is perfectly translated on the piano. Look, to play from low to high, you move from left to right. But on guitar, well, it's not linear, it's two-dimensional and possible on many different positions in opposite directions. Therefore, you can't conclude the linear nature of a scale when you play it on the guitar, unless you play it on just a single string, which is not the way the guitar is played. Look, you can even play it with open strings to make things even more complicated. Now, for the second example, let's take a look at triads. Triads are also a simple concept in music theory and can be easily explained and visualized. They are defined as chords consisting of 3 notes, which can be arranged in 3 different orders. Let's use C major as an example to illustrate this. Root position C, E, G, first inversion E, G, C, second inversion G, C, E. So there are only 3 possible note orders for one triad. Once you've moved past the second inversion, you start to cycle again from the root position. In a perfect system, like the piano, this would translate to only 3 different chord shapes. However, on guitar, it's a total mess. To demonstrate, let's go through the triad played horizontally on 3 strings. For the 3 different triad note orders, there are 4 different shapes on the guitar due to the open strings. When played C major on the E, B and G strings, we start with this position. Then the first inversion and the second inversion. And finally, the octaved root position, which is the same shape as we started with. However, notice that we started the root position on the 3rd fret. Therefore, it's possible to play the second inversion at the 1st fret, but with open strings. So, there's already an anomaly here for learning music theory. 3 chords, but 4 different shapes. But it gets even weirder. Like with scales, you can play the same triad in different positions on different strings. Therefore, the shapes on the same triad are not consistent like on the piano. For instance, if you want to play the C major triad in root position, you can start on the E, B and G strings, but you can also play the same triad with a different shape on the B, G and D strings, and also on the G, D and A strings. Notice that we moved the left hand from left to right, but played the same chord. Strange, isn't it? Well, you can practice for understanding. There is a method to really understand the guitar strategically and to avoid common confusion and pitfalls along the way. So, let me briefly give you an overview and some ground rules on what and how to practice. It's needless to say that the following is a long-term strategy, so no need to rush or be worried if you aren't there yet. Let's first address what to practice. And that's easy. Make sure to practice intervals, scales and triads on the guitar. This is really the basis for not only understanding the guitar, but also music and its theory in general. So, obviously, you need to know the note names for all this. But if you don't know all of them yet and you have some blind spots here and there, I want to say that it's totally fine to learn the note names as you learn the intervals, scales and triads. And I will show you exactly how to do this in upcoming videos. Now, let's address the crucial. How to practice this. First, practice everything, the intervals, the triads and the scales, horizontally as well as vertically. Second, practice the scales in small chunks instead of bigger parts. The smallest unit for practicing scales is just to play an octave. Third, practice in all keys through the entire circle of fifths. I know, this might sound like a lot of work, and you're right, it really is a lot of work. But I genuinely believe that practicing through all keys is an extremely valuable experience. This approach will demystify many aspects of music theory. So, you don't have to be a master guitarist or a professional to practice in all keys. What's really important is knowing how to do this and gaining the experience by doing this a few times. And I won't leave you alone with this. In upcoming videos, I will guide you step by step through my easy and detailed method so that you can incorporate this into your practice routine as it fits your specific needs. I think this will be extremely valuable for you, because if you really do these exercises, even if you only go through 2 or 3 keys, you will see and play the guitar in a totally different way. So, now that you know how insanely complex learning the guitar is, I really hope that you are not discouraged by all this. But if you feel overwhelmed or haven't fully grasped what I've talked about, that's totally fine. It's okay to be confused by this complex design. Here's what you can do about this. I encourage you to watch this video again after you go through the exercises that I will show you in the next few videos, because then you will gain the experience necessary to understand these concepts better. I will organize the upcoming exercises in an easy to follow order, so even if you are at the beginning of your guitar journey, you can follow along with me. One of the biggest takeaways is this: relax. It takes time. This understanding here is not something that you can gain and grasp in a few days, so it is certain that confusion and overwhelm will be a major part of the journey, but that's fine, that's simply the way it is. So it's not you being stupid, it's just the guitar being insanely complex. So to sum it up, relax. It is complicated, and in a way we guitarists are a little handicapped by the design of the guitar, but let's not complain too much about this. And don't avoid the music theory. Remember, it's not the music that's hard. What's hard is grasping the music through the guitar.